Today's episode is called Nazi Decoder Ring. And sometimes you just have to give credit where credit's due. I thought in having been on the planet for a very long time and been to some places on the planet, some bad places with some bad people with bad intentions, and you think you've seen it all. But the Trump administration manages to surprise me, not in a good way, but to surprise me, to shock and awe, alarm me, and I am a not a cool customer because that would I'm not cool. I'm too old and have too pale a complexion to be actually like a cool person. But I'm a pretty, having experienced things and seen things, you just kind of you let it go. You absorb things, and you're like, wow, it's just another day. But the Trump administration does manage to to bring the noise sometimes. What the quote that I posted ahead of this feed in this just on Substack was one from a white supremacist kind of fan. It's a fan favorite in the white supremacist or supremacist, depending on how you like to do that world. And there is something subtly disturbing in, as there is with so much of their their branded stuff. Their language, their special codes, their how do we signal the opposite of virtue? Whatever the opposite of virtue signaling is, Nazis and white supremacists are really good at this kind of stuff because what they want to know, and they want to know: are you on their team, or are you at least sympathetic? Are you open to hearing because they just want to let it go? But they're still remarkably in the Trump administration still reticent to roll out the most vile shit that they're capable of, in case there are people that might object to that particular brand of garbage, right? But so the unique thing about that that is not I did not trademark that phrase that I or sentence that I posted in this feed. That's a well used and well traveled um, slogan. I can call it a slogan because it has a meaning that within it that is supposed to engender a sort of twisted brand loyalty too. Right? And what you may already know, but what I'm learning more about than I think is probably healthy is, there are some very unique characteristics to the way that these folks signal one another. And this used to be done in a sort of a more subtle back room, unless you're marching in Charlottesville. If you're out there and you got a Nazi flag and you're going down the street with white hoods, you basically you're on message, right? And you're trying to show, I guess, unashamedly that you are advocating for this particular vile sort of message. But in so much of the country, because of our history fighting, oh, I don't know, like Adolf Hitler and other such people in not so long ago, and the atrocities that happened in the Second World War, that we learned some lessons, and therefore we deemed as a society that this sort of behavior and speech was reprehensible and should not be allowed in polite society. Now, polite society has been taking a beating lately. If you haven't noticed, if you just got to the planet, welcome. We're glad to have you. Knowing that you won't be staying long, we want to welcome you as kindly as we can. Maybe you'd like to stay around for World Cup. World Cup. It's this game where these humans kick a ball around and have a lot of fun. So stay around for that. Stay for the games, but leave for the racism and hate. Back to our little statement, our parable, if you will. What is unique about that statement, and there are others like it, you will note that that is made up of 14 words, right? I'm not going to read it because what if I can't count? What if I do math wrong? Then it would be really embarrassing. What I will do is leave you to do that on your own. But there are other misshapen and vile brothers and sisters of that particular grouping of words that are very similar, and they espouse virtues like homeland and this American white Christian nationalist American ideal. Not limited to America. You may have heard of that there are some homegrown Nazis in Germany, and we'll get onto them and back to them in a moment because they are in their own way pretty fantastic, and that same movement or scourge or caustic substance is spreading pretty far and wide in Western Europe. And as we know, the in France, Marine Le Pen, right, whose daddy was the founder of that ultra right party, is going through a trial right now and trying to get um, the permission to run in the next election, which heretofore has been denied to her because of campaign finance shenanigans and other things. But she's fighting. She's kind of had a strategy reset and is, I would say 50-50 now, unfortunately, to be allowed to run in the next election. And her party is doing alarmingly well, and that's right up against AfD in Germany, right? And I mention these two parties because while they don't fly the Nazi flag, they are white Christian nationalist, ultra right. Can't You could call them Nazis, and you wouldn't be far from the truth. It depends. And does that name really matter? The name resonates for the historical, for what we've learned since the rise in the 1930s of Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party. That he wasn't the first white Christian nationalist to do bad things in the name of a master race, but he was certainly the most consequential, and certainly in our recent history, as we talked about before, Mussolini was bad, but Hitler made him be as his worst self because Hitler threatened him and said, if you don't get real bad, I'm going to come and f you up. So Mussolini even ratcheted up his rhetoric. And, we talked about the different brands of, whether it's ethno fascism and the different flavors of the fascist, uh, the different flavors available at the fascist buffet. And there are little differences on, what is more focused on capturing business in order to control the economy and work in a more fascist way, as opposed to saying that, for instance, Adolf Hitler and Jews primarily and most profoundly, but he wanted to eliminate entire other categories of human, in addition to his plans for his master race, including the Roma and other marginalized communities in minority communities in and around Eastern and Western Europe. But that's the 30s, and that's in the past. But we got it again today, right? So, our dear friends, let's focus on our dear indigenous Nazis here, right? So, a couple of little devices that they use are when they're communicating amongst themselves and kind of feeling out the tolerance in a wider audience for what they're doing to see if they can bring in more recruits or get a little bit of interest. Is that these 14 word count phrases, right? That always talk about the homeland, essentially, right? What is what is so disturbing about this is many of these same phrases are popping up on your website. That is to say, a few of the websites that you pay for with your tax dollars. So, ICE, right, and Border Patrol, when they're doing their recruiting pitches, are using language that is not reminiscent of, but is directly from white Christian nationalist propaganda. Right? So, what they're doing now, an effective job in the branding department, branding themselves, and an effective communication strategy to reach the target audience. So, yeah, I mean, congratulations, right? They are. Can we be? Our government does so little well currently. Are we going to give them credit for doing this effectively? No, no, because what they're doing is each and every day we learn of something that's a little bit more base and reprehensible and ugly and dangerous and frightening. It it can be fearsome because that is what they want, fearful people. They want people that are. You've seen recent alarming accounts. One from one I saw on Miami Beach from a man that I don't know, and I'm not going to remember his name, but you know, uh, starting to get blowback on criticizing government officials. I'm going to look a little bit deeper into this one because there's a very interesting um, Miami Beach former mayor connection, Netanyahu circular. There's some. I'm going to dig a little bit because there's something a little bit um, uh, uh, dangerous and ironic about limiting speech. And this was somebody that properly criticized a Miami Beach theater's decision to run. There was a film that was done by uh, an Israeli man and a, uh, a a man from Gaza talking about the atrocities committed by the IDF, the Israel Army, towards the residents of Gaza, and it was it was being suppressed actively by the Israeli government, by Bibi Netanyahu, because they didn't want it to reflect poorly on them. Understandable. Trying to suppress the press and suppress the press, trying to mitigate the damage from truth telling. And it's not surprising when you look at what Bibi Netanyahu has done to attack the judiciary in Israel is right on par with what Donald Trump continues to do as well. So it's the authoritarian playbook attacking the most powerful institutions in our government. So speech will be it will be harder to have a platform to express your distaste with governmental action. Right? So that's not new. But I thought that this brazen use of white nationalist rhetoric in the recruiting pages and documents for ICE, in light of what happened with our friend, dearly departed friend Renee in Minneapolis, is that we talked of the other day when we were speaking about ICE and the fact that they cut way back on the training. Firearms training chopped, background investigations severely limited when talking about the hiring process for ICE. Right? In addition to that, the you talk about or Trump talked about on the campaign trail the worst of the worst. Right? And so his hiring campaign could in fact be called the worst of the worst. Excuse me if you hear some coughing in the background. That's a 10-pound four-legged assassin that is come into the room to try to inspect and see what I was doing and whether it involved chicken. So yeah, so I'll share a couple more of these delightful little couplets that are pulled right out of the Nazi playbook and are featured on, again, your websites. You as taxpayer, what the administration is doing, they're using government funds, your tax dollars, to promote Donald Trump, to promote their hiring efforts for the very state actors that are killing our citizens. And the Senate's going to go home, right? I just saw something less than an hour ago that asking senators whether they were going to take up the plan to extend the Obama uh, the subsidies for healthcare, and it looks like they're going to just walk away again and not do anything. So if you're making a list and checking it twice as to what your elected representatives are not doing that are affirmatively doing to harm you, it's all about acts and omissions. So they're acting to harm you, and the omission is the we don't give an F, pack it up, go home. Mikey Mike Grinder Johnson working on profile ahead of Mardi Gras, and that's what he's focused on, not doing the business of the American people. Right? But who the people that are working, who are efforting, right, are the Stephen Miller aligned crowd. So when you go to the website, the ICE or the Border Patrol website, and you get involved in the part about who we're looking for, there are a lot of cowboys. I like cowboy. Everybody loves a cowboy, right? That's it's yeah, Ronald Reagan. He's he's kind of our political cowboy from it's just almost 45 years ago. Everybody loves a cowboy. If you're like Americana, right? It's like the old west, an individualistic man, predominantly, thus the boy, but a kind of a rugged, no nonsense, self reliant dude, right? And so the cowboy movies, cowboy shows, Gunsmoke, and all of those things that I didn't grow up with them because I didn't watch those things, but I was aware of them because they were, in the Lorne Green sense of the word, and there were cowboys out there, and that was a big part of Americana. So this recruiting drive is pairing images that evoke a sense of what America used to be, or more accurately, the way that the current Trump white Christian nationalist fascist regime wants you to believe. There has to be a German word for this because there are lots of great German words for these really esoteric concepts, right? A longing for a time that never actually was, right? There were cowboys. There are still cowboys today, right? But that wasn't everything that America was about. And the cowboy, there are African American cowboys. There are Mexican cowboys, Mexican American, Mexican cowboys. There are lots of different kinds of cowboys. But of course, the images in these recruiting posters, schemes, a lot of, well, of course, Uncle Sam is red, white, and blue coming at you, and of course, but that's a cartoon, right? Uncle Sam. But to sell you an image, which is what the messaging is, what it the reality is, will bring you back to a time that never was. But what the messaging is if you join us, you have permission to act with impunity, to be cruel to black and brown people for as long as it takes to get them all the fuck out. Right? I mean, that's basically it. I mean, I use some very fancy language there, right? It's like I went to Harvard or something, but it's the baseline proposition is we'll overpay you to show up with a mask and a gun, whether or not you have been trained to use the gun, and you're going to help us ethnically cleanse, ethnically cleanse. Back to the 30s, the United States. And then what you will have is we're selling it as what it used to be, but it wasn't because there were a whole bunch of people that were here long before we were that were not unhealthy, not crackers, right? And they are called indigenous people. So what did we do? I mean, again, you just arrived on the planet. Welcome again. I hope you're sitting down. But what we did was we got on a boat. We went down the street. We showed up and said, "You don't own it anymore. Go live over there, and then get out." And we can't do this work alone, so we're going to bring brown and black people here to do the work that we don't want to do. And now that you're here and among us, we don't want you here anymore either, so get out. And so this is the, if you'll excuse the expression, Trump's, if not final solution, we'll call it the penultimate solution, right? Is to, again, pay bad guys to put on a mask and carry a gun and band together with impunity, with very little risk of prosecution for bad acts, and help us get these people out. And if any protesters, libs or otherwise, get in the way, too bad for them. So that's how we got here with the loss of our sister Renee and others. Right? They 2 days later in Minneapolis, they shot a Venezuelan man in the leg. I don't know his status. I don't know if he whether he arrived here legally or not. I don't give a fuck. You know, you don't need to shoot people in order to question them. Oh, yeah. So I'll leave you with a couple more little shout outs to our friends in the Nazi Party, right? So I'll drop a couple other of those delightful poetic 14-word couplets just so you can marvel. I mean, you can. There's this thing. There's a Google machine, but I don't know if you've heard about this other AI machine. It seems to be catching on, and I heard that it may be with us for a little while. That these government web, it's there, if not front and center, but they can't. If they're using these dog whistles, excuse me, to young Scooter who's running around here somewhere. Dog whistles. I don't want to disparage dogs in any way. So they can't hide it. They can't hide these little Easter eggs in the recruiting process. They can't hide them too deep in the text because a lot of the people that they're hiring don't read, right? So you gotta put it out there where they will trip over it and recognize it and they repeat it. So by my humble count, and I'm gonna dig a little deeper, but there's a lot of shit to go through here. By my count on the ICE and related material is I found either 3 or 4 of these 14 word groupings. And, it's the 14, as it's called in white supremacist world, because it's a callback to some of the founding principles, if you want to call it that, of the white supremacist movement, which was the Nazis, but the KKK prominently in the United States, and then a couple other groups, predominantly in the West and South, that were the germination, the soil that allowed some of the other smaller white supremacist movements to flourish. And the FBI did try to eliminate them over the years. Some of these organizations, quote unquote, survive now or have survived this long through prison gangs, where you will find uh, AB or Aryan Brotherhood, right? With and the other signaling, of course, tattoos, not not Trender, not Donald Trump suggesting Tren de Aragua, right? I lived in Aragua, by the way, which is a state, right, in Venezuela, and that he was suggesting that these tattoos on hands are part, which was actually, MS, which is the prison, the porn photos, Christy Nome, your girl, Christy, who should be way gone by now. I don't know how I know they don't want an L, they want only W's, but she's wrecking them and she's wrecking us. So it's time for old Christy to go bye bye. You know, the other little neat uh, numerical trick in the title of the daily essay, which is the Nazi decoder ring. Right. So what we're doing is we're using our secret devices to find out where the Nazis are hiding, but they're hiding the Nazis in plain sight. They're here. They're right. The government is out. If they could, and not get the blowback from members of Congress who have forgotten what blowback is, right? And this is not my blowback is not the same thing as my essay from a couple days ago, which was blowjob in the sun. That was wind and solar. That was a different thing. But they couldn't. We presume that they couldn't march down the street, we'll say in southern cities, with a Nazi flag saying, here's a $50,000 bonus to sign up for ICE because we have an unlimited budget now from the big, beautiful bill that was voted in by, mega voters um, to recruit with these signing bonuses. So essentially, they're doing it online instead. And they're using these as if the Nazis needed any more positive reinforcement. They're using these subtle or not so subtle messages that, hey, jawohl, we see you. We see you, Nazis, white supremacists. We're the Trump administration. We're the Republican Party because it's on the Republican Party because they haven't stood. When they decide to stand up, they own this already, right? This is the dog's going to bark in a minute because one of his friends is giving him a shout out from the street. So my apologies in advance. I will try to manage that with a toe prompt, with a gentle toe prompt with my little fuzzy friend. So yeah, so they're using these not so subtle signs. It's like gang signs. I'm not disparaging gangs. I'm I'm pro gang right now because we need all the help we can get. Right. So they're using these little. Well, I call them. What did I refer to them? It's a nesting Russian nesting doll. A surprise within a surprise. So these people, they go to the website. They say you're going to get a big bonus. We're not really going to background you, so that's okay. You're going to get to carry a gun whether you know how to use it or not, and you can wear a mask. So basically, and if you're fat and you're too old, then we will deal with it. We'll be happy to we're going to overlook a lot because Trump and Miller want us to have 10,000 more men, all men, presumably, on the street. I'm throwing things gently at my little friend to get him to stop digging to wherever he is digging to. Um, I, maybe the barking wouldn't be too bad right around now. So, yeah, I think he's saying it's time to go out and play, which I think he's right because too much Nazis can, the whole subject can get you down a little bit. My one little one, this is common knowledge, but it ties in the numerology, the 14, right? How about 88? Okay. Now this operates again, the title was gonna be something like Nazis, parenthetically, those clever bastards, right? Something like that. But it didn't make it's on the cutting room floor somewhere. 88, right? What does 88 mean? Two things. If you look at an eight, what letter in our alphabet, not the Cyrillic and the Roman alphabet, what does it look like? It's an H, 88, HH, Heil Hitler. Not subtle, but tried and true, and it's been there for a long time. And there's only two numbers or two letters that they have to remember, right? And H is also the eighth letter of the alphabet. Okay, I guess the the title for the essay that got away today should have been, could have been, that Nazis love alliteration. Nazis love alliteration. So I'm going to keep that alliterate, meaning, the same sounds, the same letter, not necessarily the same letter, the same sounds uh, beginning two or more consecutive words. Heil Hitler, right? HH. So, and it can be more. It can be if you are, you know, hey, Heil Hitler would be a tripartite alliteration. I don't know. I'll leave that one alone because I think I beat that to nearly to death. Uh, with the same feeling that reading these horrible things that our government is doing with our money to recruit bad people to harm our fellow citizens. And you finally you saw Trump yesterday. The two things that he said that he was going to be doing further cuts. He's using this uh, more alliteration, the sanctuary city excuse to cut funds to blue states, blue governors, blue mayors, blue cities, and try to harm the people that he views as his opponents even more by saying the sanctuary cities are making us unsafe and they're harming law enforcement. So I'm going to slash, you know, uh, I'm watching Michelle Wu, the mayor of Boston, my hometown team. I'm watching uh, Zoran Mamdani as well, because the most arguably the most consequential city in our beautiful country, and the love fest that Trump had with Mamdani, will that last? I just don't trust Trump to do what he said he was going to do, even though that's the city that he professes to love, as many of us also do. But I don't trust him. There is no reason to trust him because he's not given us, even as lapsed Christians who want to trust other humans, when you are shown the opposite repeatedly, then it isn't trust. It's being a sucker, right? And falling for the same banana in the tailpipe shit more than once. And we don't have time for that because we've got work to do, and then I saw a story about that. It appears that Trump had a stroke, and that was kept from the American public for the reasons. Excuses will be forthcoming, I'm sure, and denials. But what if you have noticed him in Michigan and in other places, as he was been traveling less and has had, in my humble non-medical opinion, he's had a few more stumbles and a few more of those, what my, I don't know, my mom used to call, like, uh, the slushy sounds, right? That he swallows his words and has trouble with that, which he never has, but he's freaking 80 years old, you know? Gotta give him a little bit of a break, do we? No, Nazis. Um, Pleasure. Nazi decoder ring. That was our essay for today. Wishing you all the best. And I'm going to go and be the try to be half of the pet owner I always wanted to be, and take the beautiful puppy for a stroll. So, wishing you all a good day, and we will see you soon. I'll drop a couple more of those in in comments. If you have anything related to that subject, those little signifiers that you're aware of uh, that isn't 88HH or some other 14 word version. If you have something else that out of the little the Nazi playbook, um, yeah. And our vice president is still arguing for the free speech rights of Nazis in Germany, and they're rallying strong too. So congratulations to us, and a great day, and do something nice for a fellow citizen. Thank you very much.